The Xbox One X is finally here with 130 enhanced games confirmed for the new console, including a number of high-profile titles. Every game that gets the X1 X enhancements will receive the updates for free, which can include but are not limited to either checkerboard or native 4K resolution, anisotropic filtering, HDR, high-resolution textures, along with Dolby Atmos sound. However, developers decide how their games take advantage of the more powerful hardware, so not all games are guaranteed to have all of these improvements. Some will support all of them, while some will support HDR and nothing more. With this in mind, we have created a list of the best games that push the console to its limits. We have also included details on some upcoming titles with confirmed Xbox One X enhancements in an effort to keep you informed of what's on the horizon for the 4K ready console. I'm Mahanawaz for SegmentNext, and here we go. We have all come to expect the Call of Duty series to provide 60 frames per second gameplay regardless of platform, but when that frame rate is used simultaneously with the Xbox One X's 4K resolution boost and HDR functionality, the game takes on an extraordinary level of detail and visual clarity. For instance, the opening mission, which recreates the D-Day invasion of Normandy, feels more lifelike with the realistic textures of fabric on uniforms and realistic skin textures found on faces. The game's steady frame rate, incredibly high resolution, and high dynamic range colors and lighting gives the game an almost unnerving quality when played on Xbox One X. Call of Duty World War II has HDR sliders like many other X1 X enhanced games that allow you to tweak the game's brightness and white balance to your liking. Assassin's Creed Origins is a beauty, and when it uses the power of the Xbox One X, then it makes some serious visual impact. The game renders at 4K, although those without 4K screens will still benefit from an oversampled 1080p resolution and supports HDR too. On Xbox One X, the game is visually impressive with wonderful textures and a remarkably consistent frame rate. However, it's HDR that makes the game really shine, creating greater contrast between bright sunlight and flames and shadows while adding real depth to the game world. As with most Xbox One X enhanced games, Assassin's Creed Origins has an HDR slider that allows you to manually adjust the game's paper white balance level as well as the television's brightness nits. Shadow of War features two different graphical settings. You can either have the game favor resolution or favor quality, while continuing the trend of giving users the option of how to use the X1 X's extra graphical horsepower. When favoring resolution, the game will attempt to get as close to 4K as possible and falling back on dynamic scaling when this isn't possible. Favoring quality provides wider ranging improvements but won't bring the same benefits to resolution. Textures will see enhanced detail, draw distances will be improved, there will be more vegetation and shadows, and lighting will be improved. Both modes will feature HDR and will unfortunately only run at 30 FPS rather than the 60 FPS of some of the other titles on this list. Shadow of War really impresses by the sheer detail offered by 4K, which brings the large-scale battles to life. Though the game is already out, we'll have to wait a little bit longer for the Xbox One X patch to arrive for the new Colossus. As the game already runs at 1080p and 60 FPS, we have to assume that its Xbox One X enhancements will include a 4K resolution boost and the inclusion of HDR. FIFA 18 is looking more realistic than ever before as it displays at 4K on Xbox One X at smooth 60 FPS and with HDR support. 4K resolution means even more detail and improved textures, but when it comes to fast-paced games like FIFA, it's the consistent frame rate that matters, since a slight dip in frame rate could be the difference between making and missing a goal. This beautiful game really comes to life with the expanded color span and improved lighting that HDR brings with it, contrasting the bright sunlight against the shadows cast by the stadium to add greater depth. Forza Motorsport 7 was Microsoft's poster child for the power of the Xbox One X, and thus far, it's the game that's received the most attention in terms of performance assessments. As a first-party title, the game's development team has been able to take full advantage of the Xbox One X's power. The combination of 4K HDR and locked 60 frames per second, as promised by the game's patch, brings with it some incredibly detailed and realistic visuals with crisp and responsive gameplay. The One X enhancements are most noticeable in the game's various environments, which show exceptional definition. Thanks to HDR, be it sunlight hitting the track and our vehicle looking brighter than ever, or racing down a track during heavy downpour and the weather appears super realistic. The 4K resolution also allows developer Turn 10 Studios to recreate the cars and their interiors to an astonishing degree of detail. Quantum Break looks downright beautiful on Xbox One X, given the game's cinematic styling based on film and television, even if 60 FPS is unavailable. Since the game is incredibly demanding from a hardware perspective, even on high-end PCs, Quantum Break technically runs at true resolution of 1440p, but is displayed as 2160p in its video settings. That is why the patches required to play on the Xbox One X enhanced version of Quantum Break, combined with the game install itself, will take up a staggering 178 GB of your console's storage. According to Digital Foundry, the game makes use of a temporal reconstruction technique that gives the illusion of 4K by cloning frames and using the information to make the resolution look much higher than it is. Aside from this, the game has received a texture boost, making its visuals look much crisper in the process. Moreover, the film grain effect seen in the standard Xbox One version of the game has been dropped entirely for the One X, giving Quantum Break much more depth and clarity in its presentation. This online multiplayer battle royale will have players be even more keen when it's offering 4K and supports HDR. The 4K resolution really does dial up the level of detail in the game, making you feel even more immersed in the incredibly intense action. Admittedly, we'd like to see the game running at 60 frames per second sometime in the near future, but the added bonus of high dynamic range support made up for that somewhat from a visual standpoint. Crackdown 3 was supposed to be a launch title for the Xbox One X, but it's been pushed back to spring 2018 to make sure it's extra ready to meet those high-running standards it's promising when you step up your boom and stop crime as a super-powered agent in Crackdown 3's sandbox of mayhem and destruction. Sea of Thieves is a massively multiplayer online pirate adventure coming to Xbox One X in 2018. It's a game you'll only be able to play on Windows and Xbox, and it's one of the titles Microsoft is most excitedly promoting for the new console. It will even support cross-play between Windows 10 and Xbox, so you can play with everyone. Standing on the deck of your ship, the sun setting over an island brimming with the promise of treasure, the colors of the light are truly beautiful, with a cartoonish art style that oscillates between tongue-in-cheek fun and being genuinely stunning. Other than these shared titles, there are more in development, so gear up for that and let us know in the comments which one are you going to play on Xbox One X. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more. Until next time.